Hey y'all. How you doing? Hey Hobie. Hope y'all are doing well today. I know I certainly am. I am about halfway through a trail run in the Grand Tetons. Promise this isn't a Zoom background, although if you'd like to use it, maybe I'll take a picture after this and then we can all pretend that we're here for the rest of the Hobie virtual seminar. But I live in Wyoming, where the Grand Tetons are located, but I am from Massachusetts, like you are. And like you, I went to Massachusetts Hobie as a student ambassador for St. John's Prep when I was in 10th grade. And since then, have been a part of their staff in a few different roles. And I am very excited to be back for another year with you all, moving through this weekend talking about leadership. And I want to congratulate you, since I think we can all agree that we're leaders here if we are taking the time to be part of a leadership seminar to grow and enhance our skill sets. So thanks for being here. Thanks for bearing with us in our virtual seminar experience. I'm sure you all have probably way more experience than us staff members with this by now, since you've been tasked with navigating school and life from a virtual standpoint and are hopefully succeeding. For me, right now, there are some tools that I'm using for my own success, part of which is just being out here. I think taking some time to go outside and be active and push myself is something that's important to me and helps me stay a little bit sane. And when I go into the backcountry, which means that I'm quite a ways from civilization at the moment, I like to feel like I'm prepared. And so when I'm preparing, there's a lot of information that I digest and make heads or tails of so that I feel safe with what I'm doing. There's also a lot of gear that I bring. And the gear that I bring and the knowledgeable skills that I bring come from quite a few years of learning, fostering, and cultivating. And today I have a backpack with me full of stuff. Got some water and food and layers and a bunch of things to keep me safe. Also have a toolkit that I brought with me for my own leadership that I'm using today and being out here so that I can make sure that I make it home safe. And I'm going to share some of those skills with you. And I think we can all take away something from them. If the outdoors isn't your cup of tea, just pretend that this is a different Zoom background and we can apply these skills to your everyday life. There are a couple things that I'd like to address before we get going here. And I'm going to consult my backpack for a second. First and foremost, my name's Derek. I go by he, him pronouns, and I am going to be sharing some of my own story with you today. A story that started in Massachusetts and comes up to current day out here in Wyoming. And while I do that, I'd like to challenge you to think a little bit about the information that I'm sharing with you, how it's applicable to your own life. I'd also ask you to listen with the intent to learn and to grow and to share openly and honestly and challenge yourself to be constructive. So I'm going to use I statements when I'm talking. I'm going to try not to generalize for others, but just take ownership of what I'm saying. This is my story, and so I'm going to share it from my own lens. I hope that you can take something from it, and I hope that it helps to frame your perspective as we learn and grow this weekend. We're going to start with personal leadership, and with personal leadership, I want you to try to take a second and think about what that means to you. There's no right or wrong answer. I think the very definition personal leadership means that it's an individual thing, and it can be different in a lot of ways for a lot of people. There are going to be some similar themes that can be adapted from person to person, but that show up kind of across the board. without further ado, let's jump in. So I mentioned that I'm from Massachusetts. I also mentioned that I was a Hobie ambassador, and I think even though I'm a staff member now, and a group facilitator and a speaker here, I like to still think that I'm an ambassador. I think we all are at this point. We're part of a collective, and we're embracing sort of the Hobie vibe, the Hobie family, and we're bringing it back with us after the weekend into our respective communities, and we're going to be ambassadors for those communities with what we learn here. So for me, my learning is ever evolving. I'm from Georgetown, Massachusetts. I grew up with my mom. My parents got divorced when I was very young, and then I visited my dad every other weekend in Medfield, Massachusetts, where he and his family lived. I had some step siblings and some extended family members that lived there as well. And so I kind of grew up with this double life, for lack of a better term, but that's what it felt like to me. It was really hard to be able to maneuver between those communities fluidly and in a way that felt normal and not forced. And so for a lot of my upbringing, I think I took extrinsic or outer expectations from other people, from communities, from things that I was perceiving, and internalized them, and then put on a mask and would show up in those situations the way that I felt like I should, instead of just being myself. And that took a long, long time to build, and then that skill set took a long, long time to dismantle. And it wasn't until later, after having gone to St. John's Prep and after having been at the University of Vermont, that I started to deprogram some of those habits that I had formed. I won't call them good or bad habits. They're just habits that I felt no longer served me, because they brought a lot of negativity with them. I am in the outdoor space now. I played team sports growing up, and I think part of what I loved about team sports was the challenge. It was a great arena for me to be able to test my skills with my teammates against other teams, but also personally, how hard can I work? What outcome can I create? And I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I put a lot of pressure on my goals and what I wanted to achieve. The problem was that in middle school and high school, I was also dealing with a lot of mental health issues that I wasn't really able to recognize or to cope with when I was at that age. And it wasn't until later that I learned those coping skills, but it became really hard. I'm sure a lot of you are involved with different clubs and organizations and sports teams and families, and maybe you have a job or a part-time job here or there, or just all these things that comprise your life, and you want to, be a part of those things and do well. I think for me, expectation was something I didn't learn how to deal with until later. I just didn't have the capacity. I also didn't want the capacity. I think it felt like I wasn't good enough if I wasn't able to navigate it on my own. And it took a long time to be able to ask for help. As I was moving through high school, the pressures of getting recruited to play sports in college, and be a good student and put a smile on and go to practice and do well on the test and try to keep up with everybody else, look left, look right. Like, do you know what you want to be when you grew up? Do you know what you want to be when you grow up? Do you know where you want to go to college? Do you know what you want to study? I kind of started to deploy the mantra, fake it till you make it, which I think can be helpful in some areas, but the way that I used it wasn't very helpful at all. I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I didn't know what was possible outside of what I had seen, because how could you? And so as I was growing up, I think because of the environment of my surroundings, I thought that I could be a doctor, a lawyer, something in finance, maybe work in banking, or manage accounts or something. A lot of these terms I didn't even know what they actually were. It was just like, cool, that's what's expected of me, and I'm gonna go do it. And then as I moved through high school and got closer and closer and closer to what I perceived, that deadline to be of, okay, time to go to college and like flip the switch and do that, I got terrified. And so I had always kept that double part of my life, like over here. Like, this is what I'm showing everybody. This is what I'm actually thinking. And I did not want to portray weakness. And so I marched along and I went to the University of Vermont. I didn't know what I was going to study when I got there, but I figured I'd figure it out. Too long, don't read. I did figure it out. It was a doozy of a process, but we made it. But when I first got there, I had no idea. And so those pressures were very much alive and well in my own life. And they manifested in ways of uncertainty that looked a lot like drinking, partying, disengaging from friends and family, and kind of sticking my head in the sand and pretending those problems didn't exist. And as I felt all of those stresses and those pressures, I kept telling everybody I was fine. I'm fine. I'll be fine. I'm fine. And the truth is that I wasn't. Truth is that I was just so angry at myself, humiliated, and not willing to ask for help, and felt really embarrassed. Felt like I was letting myself down. I wasn't doing the kind of things that I wished that I had been doing, or been on the right track or the path that I wanted to get to. And it led to a lot of really negative thoughts that were really hard to verbalize for a long time. But I think for me, as I moved through that process, I became more distant and distant and distant. And I stopped showing up for life. I was drinking and partying way too much. And it was an escape. It was me ignoring reality, and that spiraled. It spiraled really, really hard until I had to take some time away from school, which was the right move. It was a hard one to admit at the time, but one day I was at home at my mom's house in Massachusetts, and I'd taken a break from school, and I just need to go for a drive. Still drinking and coping with things in a not so great way at this time. And I had started drinking that evening, and brought more alcohol with me, and I drove to a place near my house, and truthfully, I didn't plan on returning. I planned on drinking and not going home. And I sat there for a long, long time. I can't tell you how long it was, looking back on it, but I was opening and closing a knife, and I was trying to decide between my neck or my wrist, and I didn't want to live anymore. And I can't tell you to this day what made me do it, but I broke down crying, and I picked up my phone, and I called my best friend, and I said, hey, I'm not okay. I need your help. And my friend said, thank you for calling me. I'm here for you. And he's like, so here's what we're going to do. You're going to call your mom. She's going to come pick you up. You're going to call your therapist, and tell them what's going on. And if that's something you're not comfortable with, I'll make that call for you. And if that's not a call that you're able to make or want me to make, we're going to call the police. And I said, okay. And so that was a hard call. That was That was just something that I was not prepared for. I wasn't prepared to be received that well for the state that I was in. And my friend was there for me. He listened and he did the right thing, and he included higher responsible parties than him. My mom, therapist, potential law enforcement if necessary. And that was the right thing. He wasn't supposed to be the one to save me, and he wasn't supposed to wear that himself. He used his resources in a smart way to get me the help that I needed, and it worked. And because of his help and because of my mom's support, and the people that cared about me, I was able to start some medication, talk through some of this stuff with therapists and professionals. And then once I was stable again and felt like I had a purpose, I was motivated. I was ready to go. I was back on my feet, and I had always had these skills and these interests in writing and communicating and marketing and the outdoors, and I had built up a pretty good resume, and I was always a good student. And so I was like, what can I do to reach this next level? And my mom helped me find this program called Knowles, and they take people on trips around the world, and they teach them the skills. You don't need any experience. You just show up, and they teach you how to be in places like this, and camp, and survive and thrive and become these outdoor badasses that I had always looked up to. And I went 90 days, a full semester, and I got college credit for it. And I went to Wyoming, actually, and got to do a bunch of stuff. Went backcountry skiing, went whitewater canoeing for weeks at a time, went backpacking through Utah and what's now Grand Staircase Escalante and the Cedar Mesa area of Bears Ears, and then went rock climbing, and I learned all these skills, and I was surrounded by people who were in a similar situation to me. Not necessarily that they had been where I had been mentally or on my own journey, but they were there to learn, and they were there to develop their skills. And we did it together. We learned, and we pushed ourselves. That's the biggest thing. And I learned a lot while I was on that semester, and some of the tools that I learned there are things that I take with me every day now. And there's a really good way to remember them. I have them here in my backpack, but there's 7 skills, and essentially, more or less, pretty easy to remember, but it's Ebka Kajitum Tausava. I know, very simple. I should just keep skipping over it, but if you needed a little reminder of what those things are, they're right here. And so there's 7 skills. First, expedition behavior. The second is competence. The third, communication. The fourth is tolerance or judgment and decision making. The next one is tolerance for adversity and uncertainty, self-awareness, and vision and action. I'll repeat those later. But essentially, what they mean, expedition behavior, is pretty much just about your attitude. You're going to show up and you're going to contribute. You're going to be a thoughtful and engaged participant. You're going to be the person that helps, that is willing to accept criticism and feedback, that is trying to fill the gaps. You see things that need to be done and you do it. And then competence. You don't need to be the best at something the first time you do it. In fact, you won't be. It takes a lot of effort and time and dedication to build skill. And that's okay. Competence says that you're going to try to be open to building that skill. And as you move through these activities, you gain competence in those skills. So it's a willingness and a development. Communication. I opened this by saying that I was going to use I statements. I was communicating to you all that I'm taking ownership of what I'm bringing to the table. Communication goes beyond what you say, though. It's also body language and what you're not saying. Sometimes silence speaks more than words. Sometimes body language speaks more than words. But when you cue into all of them, you can paint a picture of what's actually going on. It's also important to communicate or advocate for yourself. And that's not to say that you shouldn't care about other people, but how can I know what you're thinking or feeling or the narrative that you're telling yourself if you don't share it with me, and vice versa? How can you know where I'm coming from if I haven't shared with you that information? Communication is also listening to the information being shared. So if I say that we are about halfway through a 20-mile trail run and there's 4,000 feet of elevation that we need to get through today, you'd have no idea what to expect unless we communicated what we were expecting. If you thought we were going for a 2-mile run in the park just downtown, get some ice cream and come home, and I brought you here and we're doing this, you're gonna be fucking pissed at me. You're gonna be like, wait a minute, that's not what I thought we were doing. And you'd be right to think so, because I didn't communicate with you. And so in that situation, it's important to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? And let's try to overlap that as best we can. Obviously, there's some give and take there. For reference again, that was expedition behavior, competence, communication. Next up, judgment and decision making. Now, judgment and decision making. We're out in kind of a big day today. There's snow up here, and so we're concerned about avalanches, and we're concerned about the snow getting too soft because of the sun. And if the sun melts the snow enough, we might really have a problem out here. So that's a judgment that I'm making based on the information provided. And so what I did, the decision that I made with that information, is that I was going to start really early this morning. So I got up at 4 a.m. because I wanted to be driving by 5 a.m. to where I needed to be. And then I wanted to be running by 6 a.m. so that we could make as much progress as possible and that we wouldn't be putting ourselves in danger. Now, judgment and decision making also says that if anything changes today, say we got thunder and lightning, or say I did see snow that was sliding earlier than I thought it would, could I turn around and go back? Absolutely. Could I say, hey, this is no longer safe, I'm going to change my mind? Absolutely. Now, the thing about judgment and decision making is that it's an ongoing process, and it works with all of the other ones. It works with expedition behavior, with competence, with communication, and with the ones that we haven't got to yet. We've got ebkukajidam tausava. So jidam is judgment and decision making. Next, we have tau, or tolerance for adversity and uncertainty. It's in my backpack here. There you go. Now, tolerance for adversity and uncertainty also says that if I encounter things that I wasn't expecting, the only thing that I can control are things that I have accounted for. There are things outside of my control that I can only respond to. Now, I use the word respond because we all have a gut reaction when things happen. However, that might not always be the best course of action. And so what we can do is we can choose to analyze how we're reacting and then respond. And that response is a choice. I'm choosing how to show up. I'm saying, deep breath. Okay, I'm feeling really scared. And because I'm feeling scared because why? And I can zoom out. And when I zoom out in that space, I now can better understand what why I am reacting the way that I am, and then I can choose what to do about it, and that's my response. Now, that is also a component of self-awareness. Self-awareness is my favorite, although we don't pick favorites, but it's my favorite of these 7 skills, because self-awareness is what I can use as a measurement for myself to interact with all the other things. So if my face here is a circle and this is all 7 skills, my nose would be self-awareness, and it interacts with all of the other ones. And so these are not chronological steps. You can circle back at any time, but self-awareness is the ability to say, hey, this is the story that I'm telling myself based on the information around me. This is what I'm thinking, feeling, doing. Now, if I have no idea that my partner is thinking, feeling, doing things, I can't help them. However, if I know what I'm thinking, feeling, doing, I can anticipate what my impact on my partner is. And that's a really, 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 really useful skill. And so being able to deploy self-awareness in and out of situations and figure out what you can do to impact your own journey, your own decision making, your own tolerance for adversity and uncertainty. You can also translate those to group dynamics. I'm sure you're all used to group projects, and that is a prime example of where you can deploy all of these skills, but specifically self-awareness. The last, ebkukajidam tausa va, is vision and action. Vision and action is the ability to implement and deploy these skills, all of them, sometimes only a couple, sometimes all, or sometimes just one, sometimes them all in an order, or scramble the order and start over. But they are very, 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 very useful skills that you can use. They're a toolkit you can take with you in everyday life. They saved my life. Knowles, in my journey through that self-discovery and self-growth process, was really fundamental for me. And then when I went back to the University of Vermont after, I was invigorated to do my best. I felt like I knew myself better. I felt like I understood myself in a way that I hadn't before. And I was able to use that understanding and move forward in a way that I started pursuing a career in the outdoors. It started in college, and then I started working for companies after college, leading trips and taking people out here to show them the kind of magic that it had on me, and create and foster those moments for them to learn and develop and go, aha, I figured it out. And that's really magical and really special, and something that I thoroughly enjoy. I also went on to create and develop a career in marketing and storytelling. And after leaving the University of Vermont, I got a job at Knowles and joined their marketing department, and traveled the country sharing the good word about Knowles and doing things behind the scenes to create marketing campaigns, and email marketing campaigns, and writing copy, and a lot of stuff that I really enjoy. I'm kind of a nerd. It's super fun. And I took the skills that I learned there and created the Expedition Journal. And I travel and do some public speaking presentations about this very topic. I also write and curate and produce content in the outdoors. And I'm lucky enough to do that here in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So some things I'd like you to take with you through the weekend and beyond. The 7 skills: ebkukajidam tausava, expedition behavior, competence, communication, judgment and decision making, tolerance for adversity and uncertainty, self-awareness, vision and action. There is another thing that I would like to share with you, and it's a challenge. And I would like to challenge you, all of you, if you're willing to accept it. It's a mission, and that mission is permission. Give yourself permission to do things that you didn't think you could. Mission, permission. It's okay to find happiness doing things that you didn't think possible. And the recipe for that is to always try to expose yourself to new opportunities. Try, do, assess, repeat. Try something new, do it, assess how it went, repeat. And I promise that your scope of what you thought possible and the barriers that you set for yourself will break and reform until they are expansive and you can see far beyond what you originally could see. And if you keep saying yes to small opportunities that are related to things that you like and things that you want to do or improve on, if you keep saying yes to those small opportunities, you will create your own path. You don't need the map, because every step you take into the direction you want to go will create your own map and your own path to where you want to be. Mission, permission. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for having these fun and very important conversations with me and with your fellow ambassadors at Hobie. And I hope you have a really fantastic weekend here at Massachusetts Hobie and take the skills back with you to your home communities. I can't wait to hear from you. Please message me. Please let me know what you're giving yourself permission to do. Please let me know what you took away from this weekend. I love having these conversations, and I can't wait to talk to more of you. The sun is getting a little late, and I still have to go up and over that pass and run down the other canyon. So I'm gonna take off, but thank you so much, and we'll see you on the other side. Cheers.